All right. There you go. Guys, what is going on?
What's going on?
Same old.
Same old stuff. We're over here just talking about how we still have sore biceps from 4 days ago. Don't worry about it. The key to not you just have to. It's similar to like the joke when you're in college. And it's like the best way to deal with the hangover. You just never stop drinking. The best way to deal with sore arms, you just never stop doing curls.
Motion is lotion.
Just been doing 21s since the weekend.
Oh man, so we that was last weekend. Yeah, hard to believe that just happened so rapidly. But yeah, so we just had a training camp with a handful of athletes from our training team and a few guests out in Salt Lake City, Utah. So we wanted to have a podcast here to go over, debrief, talk about some of our biggest takeaways. It was an absolute blast. There were so many cool side conversations, training moments, learning opportunities that came up. So we're going to try to recapture as much of that for you guys as we can. If you're listening, you're like, what is this whole training camp stuff that you're talking about? The training camp is something we do for members of our training team. Right now we're doing it 3 times a year, but I can definitely see us moving to a quarterly in-person training camp event. I had a blast. It was so much fun. So the training team is a totally online remote training experience where you can choose 7 different program paths. You get an individualized coach, awesome team, community competition, but it is all online. So the training camps come free of charge to you just as a part of being on the team. And it's a way for you to actually come hang out with us in person, get hands-on coaching, learn a thing or two, and then also just like hang out with the other people that are on the team and throw down, compete, and have some fun. Put names and faces together, make internet friends, in-person friends. And it was fantastic. So what we'll do here, we'll go one by one. I just want to hit first, what were some of our biggest takeaways from the weekend and the event as a whole? Takeaway number 1, Jack Mormon coffee is still phenomenal. Cold brew on point. Obviously, if anybody listening to this has ever come to Salt Lake City and you like coffee, in particular cold coffee, go to Jack Mormon. If this happens to be listened to by the guy that owns Jack Mormon, I am totally on board for a Jack Mormon podcast sponsorship. Just contact.
I think it'd be up for it. He pulled me aside for a few minutes. We talked about it.
Dude, we can make this happen. Rebel Performance Radio, powered by Jack Mormon. I like it.
I brought beans home. They're awesome. Just as good.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, they're so good. They're on point. Mm-hmm. Totally on point. But we can circle back. Here. So I had 4 big. I wrote them on a sticky note here so I don't forget them. 4 big takeaways from the camp. The more I've been thinking about this and reflecting over the last few days since we just wrapped up on Sunday. Big takeaway number 1 for me was just like a big affirmation that like I'm doing what I want to be doing, that I believe in what we're doing at Rebel and the mission and what we're trying to bring to the world. Like this idea of bringing a evolved strength and conditioning model to the table where it's like, hey, you can be strong, jacked, powerful, well-conditioned, move well, and actually feel good while you do so. Like this is possible, it's doable, and we can do it all remote. We can give you an awesome experience. We can get you training, get you competing, get you throwing down. Like we can bring back those glory days of what it felt like in high school and college or even in professional sports. So that was a big one for me. It's just like a giant affirmation that, hey, you're working on the right things. You're moving in the right direction. Because like, I wish I could do that every weekend, to be totally honest. Because the other thing that came out of it that was so cool is like, just the people who are involved are just good people, like just fun people that I want to spend more time with. Mm-hmm. So that was big number 1 for me, was the affirmation. Takeaway number 2, more training related, is that there is a legitimate cost to high intensity change of direction work, because I've been doing change of direction work, but coming to realize I've not actually been doing it that hard. Because when we started lining up face to face and running 5-10-5s and stuff, bro, my like deep hips have been sore for 4 days now. And today was like day 1 where it felt like, oh, we're kind of getting back to some semblance of normality. But it's one of those things when you take it out and bring it back in, like you got to realize that like legit high intensity change of direction work where we're absorbing first force and turning it back around definitely comes at a cost. So we got to be smart in how that gets reintroduced for people, or even just on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, like how we're managing that training volume for people that have been seeing it. Big takeaway Number 3 was just the importance of play. Like, it was just a fun weekend. Getting to throw down, have an awesome team lift environment, play spike ball, go on hikes. It was just playing for 48 hours, which I absolutely loved because that's something that not enough people still have in their lives. Keiran, you and I talked about this at one point over the weekend where people just get in this normal rhythm and flow. And when you become an adult, it's the only time that people want to hang out is if they want to be hanging out drinking alcohol. People don't like to play anymore. I'm like, I don't really like alcohol. It's like, I'd rather go play spike ball or play literally anything, flag football, kickball, sand volleyball. And so it was just a lot of fun to be around 8 other people who share that same interest in just playing and having fun, and alcohol does not have to be part of that conversation. And then my number 4 takeaway, I really liked that lateral stance row that we did, Keiran, that you brought up on that change of direction day on the back end. That made so much sense to me, integrating kind of like if you're going to have a change of direction focus on a training day, that rowing variation just integrated so well with what you feel when you're doing change of direction work. And I think it's a great way to throw accessory work in on the back end on one of those training days to help tie everything together. Like, feel yourself getting into that side, get into that hip, get a nice row. You still get a really nice lat scap movement, can feel posterior delt and all that fun jazz. So those are my big 4. Affirmation, cost of change of direction, play is awesome. Really like the lateral stance row, lateral stance one arm dumbbell row, something I'll probably start using more and programming more than I have traditionally. Let's pass it on over to Keiran. See what you got.
Yeah, I think the weekend was so great, like you said, just to be around a lot of like-minded people. Just because you get so caught up in the monotony of like, like especially like we talked about, like all you're really going to do as an adult now, especially it feels like in the Northeast, is like go out, grab food, grab a couple beers, and like, you're the weird one because like you want to go play spike ball, or like, God forbid you mention like, hey, you want to go like play medicine ball, volleyball or something. You're like, no, that's super weird. So surrounding yourself with some of those people like that your community that you guys can get after together, you have similar values and you want to like push each other. Being able to meet some of those guys, like I've known Ryan since 2018, and that was the first time we met in person. I think COVID kind of pushed that back a little bit, but same thing with Alan. Alan was in the first Silverback, right? So 2019.
Yeah, the UTS crew. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's another one I've known for years online and finally got to meet in person. So having that online community is great, and then taking it to the next step where you can actually get around each other and meet and have that face-to-face time, is that community for me is huge. And I think another thing was just living really intentionally. And I think that kind of goes kind of in the community thing. It's really great seeing you out there with your routine and stuff like that. How you eat, sleep, and, how if you want those people around you, you're like, selfishly, I just want to like kind of hang out with you guys and actually making it happen. Right. Like just living that good life, like very intentionally. It's a little work on the front end, but the payoff to be around the people that you want to be around and to have those habits in place are really, really important. And then I think one of the things from the training perspective, I had a ton of fun. I was the obnoxious.
Yeah, that's the most
person.
fun I've had lifting in a while. I was gonna say, dude, like once the music got loud, like we started moving some weight, it's like, all right, here we go.
Oh yeah, I feel like I'm pretty reserved a lot of the time, kind of laid back, and I think I almost lost my voice just like yelling at guys and like going crazy. So that was super fun. But then I got so much value out of the track day where all the guys had great questions, but then it just got the wheels turning a little bit. And then listening to you and Ryan speak about how you think about programming and stuff, like surfing the force velocity curve, where you got the programming for that. That was super helpful. Seeing how you guys cue some of the basic drills that I like to use, but just looking at it from a different lens. So just being around other super knowledgeable coaches, but seeing it from their perspective, like I love the A series, but you talked about how you kind of like the dead leg where with the snap down and the emphasis on like the repositioning on the way down, which, and then Ryan got into that a little bit, and I love that. And I used it with my hockey guys a little bit. And I mean, it was awesome to see how quickly I can implement stuff like that just from being able to pick your guys' brains a little on that. So that was the track day was really valuable for me as well. And then I think the last thing, definitely like on a personal note, the change of direction needs to get a little more volume and attention on my end because my hips, it was like not even my deep hips, my groin. I think the person on the plane wanted to like shoot me because I was just trying to move and find a comfortable spot the entire time. So definitely need to spend a little more time with some of the change of direction stuff. But again, we have a nice little library at Rebel where I could pick some of that up. But yeah, so definitely the living intentionally, the community is huge. Those two are huge for me. And then from the training side, like revisiting the force velocity progressions and then giving the change of direction a little more love.
Yeah, dude. On the change of direction front, before we hand it over to URP, I was going to say another thing that I took away was I think unanimously across the board when we're talking about, if you just want to think of that 5-10-5, like anything where I'm having to run, plant, turn around pretty much on 180 degrees and go back in a straight line. One of the things that across the board I think people struggled with, and maybe it's just because they weren't ever coached and cued this way, is the importance of the inside leg. Because most people, like, they come into their cut and that lead leg's decelerating. And then they try to use that lead leg as the primary way to get them going the other direction. And so, yeah, like the lead leg needs to stop you and get you going. But the leg that really fucking gets you, like that drives you out of a cut is the inside leg. And we saw unanimously all the guys there had like really lazy inside legs where they were super aggressive on the outside leg, but the inside leg kind of was just there. And once they started actually driving off that inside leg, it's like, okay, now we got some people coming out of cuts a little bit better. Like we're going here. So that's one, I think that's also worth mentioning. But Ryan Patrick, what do you got, my friend?
I will jump right into the COD stuff, and I'll just kind of tag along with what you said, and then I'll get into my takeaways. But if you have a lot of difficulty with that inside leg, a curved run is essentially a series of that penultimate step and learning how to transition. So it's a very easy way to clean that up, and you can just play with the radius of the curve. But on the idea of the COD, I think competition is absolutely one of the biggest missing elements in training. I have been training by myself for years, just because of my schedule. It doesn't align with other people. It's hard if to make a commitment to somebody else, because I never know when exactly I'm going to get to train, because I have kids and the brick and mortar, and we're always kind of navigating stuff because my wife owns a business too. But being in an environment that fuels competition on some level, not that every session has to be, PR session, it just drives you. And that goes all the way back to, when we got into Silverback, it was just one thing each week where we really just got up for it. But man, it made all the difference in training, because then it started to be, I need to hit these accessory work because it's going to help my conditioning. And if we have a conditioning test, I need to be prepared. So it just, it really gives you something I think locks people in. I know it's a huge part of what we're doing at Rebel Performance with the team training, but it's a missing element, I think, for a lot of people. I don't know about you guys, but I really suck at like fitness for recreation. Every time I just like I just want to be healthy or just feel a little bit better. Like I crash and burn. It's just not motivating at all. So I have to have some level of like.
You're not a man of moderation.
I mean, I can do moderation. I can do low intensity workouts, but I have to be moving towards something. Otherwise, there's just no trajectory. Secondly, I think the environment is really key. I don't have the luxury of being around people, even though I was remote with Silverback when we did it. There was just something inherently motivating, knowing there were a lot of other guys doing the same workouts in different time zones. We'd log in, we'd check in. And then being around you guys there, I mean, we already talked about, we got into the gym, everyone, it was a beautiful place. Youth CrossFit is amazing.
Yeah, we need to throw a quick huge thank you out to
thank
Madison
you guys.
and Britt.
That place was awesome.
Yeah.
But, we got there and we kicked the music on, and it was okay during the warm-up. And then it got a little louder during COD, so we could still talk over it. And then we got into the lifting, and it just kept getting louder and louder. We got louder. The weights went up. I mean, I already told you, Mike's like, I think I'm gonna stop at 225. And, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, no, you're not.
Bro, no chance.
No, not a chance. Not a chance. I think he ended up hitting 275 or 315. I mean, I don't remember what it was, but it was well above what he had planned. And that environment, and I don't think anybody got sloppy either.
No, he was smooth. Maybe your first set of lunges was a little sloppy, but Mike's front squats was great.
I'll touch on that in a second. But yeah, that environment of being around people who are motivated. So if you're in a place where people just don't align with your values and the things that you're doing, it's really hard to find these people who, secondly, you have a ton of time to hang out with. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm in my mid-30s, I have very few relationships outside of like stuff I do at business, my immediate family. Like, there's very little time left over. And so I had to curate that group very tightly. And I know a couple years ago is almost exactly the time we started Silverback. I was kind of angry. Like, I was just really upset. I'm like, why is everybody, I just feel like everyone around me is mailing it in, just, calling it quits, talking about back when they were in their prime. I still feel like I got a lot of kick left in me. I know I can get stronger. I know I can do all these things. And it was really associating myself with you guys, even though it was remote, where it just made a significant difference in what I was able to do. So I can't emphasize the value of the environment, not just for training, but just for how I conducted myself day to day. And then to Keiran's point, seeing, even your routines and, just how methodical you are about taking care of yourself and the play. And, even the people in Utah, I mean, we got out to the trail before 7 a.m. and we couldn't find a parking spot. I love that. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah, we were there at 6:45 and had to wait for 25 minutes.
It was crazy, but it was awesome. I'm like, man, these people are here. They're getting after it. And the crazy part is we only waited for a little bit and people were already coming back from the trail. Because they knew. Yeah. So, I mean, that culture is just really energizing to me. It just speaks to me. It was a lot of good soul food just being there with you guys and everyone else. So, again, I think we're trying to create this at Rebel is bring these people together who are very closely aligned. Not to plug us, but I think it's awesome. And I love the people that we are associating with. It was so cool to finally meet everybody that has been, at a distance for a couple years. And COVID was crazy, but even still, I mean, just knowing we got this time to come together, to break bread, talk shop, it was really cool. And, the last thing, warm-ups.
They're overrated.
They're overrated. Gosh, there's so much stuff about positioning and flossing and flows and ISAs and all that stuff, and I think it does have value. But I think some people forget to warm up. And if you really know what you're doing, and I feel like if you understand these concepts, even if you're not the best mover, the sensory motor work can accomplish a lot of the positional goals that you want to achieve. Because I stupidly and impulsively jumped into 225 on the reverse lunges because I saw you guys doing it. The music was getting loud. I got a little jacked up and I just went for it and I'm fine. I'm not saying you should always jump into max, but I think there are multiple opportunities throughout the session to program intelligently and keep yourself healthy. For the most part, I've been able to keep injuries at bay, and it's just by treating my accessory work very appropriately, not trying to go full throttle on everything and really chasing the positions and feeling muscles and finding, the right joint angles. And it's made all the difference. It's allowed me to continue to get stronger. It's allowed me to progress in multiple domains, which I think is at the heart of Rebel. And it was something that was very shattering to me, right? Interference effect. I think for the average person, you can stretch the boundaries in multiple directions at the same time and pretty far, much farther than you probably have considered up to this point. At some point, I think specialization does play a role, but I mean, many of the guys that we work with, they could shift into endurance events. They could go to strongman. They could go to max strength or powerlifting. Like, they're just very agile physiologically, which I think is, the more robust you are is just ideal. But yeah, that was a big takeaway too, is just, because I even said when we were warming up, I'm like, this is the most I've warmed up in probably 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm usually just hitting the ground running. So those were definitely a lot of the big things that I took away from it. It was an awesome weekend. I can't speak highly enough. If you're part of the Rebel community, my God, you have to be out at the next one. It was a blast.
Yeah, man, absolutely. To come back to the lunges, I think that's another takeaway moment that we can probably talk about, because I can tell you from experience that you can get people strong as piss with a reverse lunge. Like, because a lot of times you have people who they don't squat well. They don't have levers for squatting. A perfect example are baseball guys I used to train. Right, like, they're 6'5", long, lanky. Like, they got so much weird stuff going on. If you try to squat that person, it's a train wreck. Like, maybe if you have a hack squat or you have a pendulum squat, you can make it work and it'd be nice. We didn't have access to that. And so, like, don't overlook the value of really heavy SSB, barbell front rack, either reverse lunges or rear foot elevated Bulgarian split squat style stuff. Like, you can get really strong on one leg in those patterns. Like, I've had a baseball guy go 405 for a double or triple per side on an SSB reverse lunge. Like, yeah, just dumb strong. So you don't have to squat, right? Like, that's another sacred cow. If you have a lot of tools and options, this individual, as an example, his main lower body lift was a SSB reverse lunge. And we treated it similar to a squat. Like, we hit doubles, we hit triples, we hit fives, and he got dumb strong there. And then he also could go and deadlift. He ripped probably like 550, 575 on deadlift. So, like, definitely don't overlook the value of that heavy reverse lunge. That's a potential replacement for squats, if squats are a problem for you. Like, I know, Keiran, we did that for you, and you came into Silverback and were having some knee issues the first time. We just got you heavy front rack reverse lunging, and like, you got strong as piss doing that.
Oh yeah, I felt like $1 million. At first, I was like super bummed that like I had to like keep cutting the squats and stuff. And you're like, let's throw this in there, see how you do. And to your point, I got brick shithouse on my reverse lunges. Like, I think the second iteration, it was the first Silverback after the beta test, and it was like an accessory where you were like, all right, let's hit like a 6RM, and I was like 365, like, and I was like, oh, like, this feels good. Like, I got a little juice on this too, where it's just like felt great, felt strong, like could push load. Like, I think I had so much fun with that on Saturday too. That was, everybody felt pretty solid under the bar. Ryan liked it so much, he jumped over to the reverse lunge, and then
Ryan
he went
was
back.
just front squatting, front rack reverse lunging, and he was eating from the buffet.
Supersetting.
I thought you were coming with us, and I turned around, you're already back front squatting again. I was like, oh, this guy's going for it.
Dude, you did 275. It was just butter. I mean, it was cake. So smooth.
Cake.
Yeah, I just feel like that's a great main option for guys, for a lot of people who have issues with that. That's true. So
especially athletes. Like, it makes a lot of sense for people that want to be athletic. So don't be afraid to pull a squat out and go with that heavy lunge pattern. Because like you just said, Keiran, I think that 365, was that a barbell front rack or an SSB?
It was an SSB front rack. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and you did it for what, a 6 per side?
Yeah. So
yeah, right. I'm like, bro, there are a lot of people that would love to front squat 365 for 6.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think it has so much application. It makes so much sense. The first place I ever saw that really used well, I was probably like 23 when I did my first internship at Cressy Performance, right? Like, we heavy reverse lunge people all the time. Like, almost no one squatted. We did tons of heavy lunges and deadlifts, and I was like, these guys are getting strong as fuck. Like,
yeah, and
why don't more people do this?
It carries over really well to your squat if you want to throw it back in.
Then you come back to a squat and you feel like an absolute just like brick shithouse. It's like, oh, I am locked in. Locked in. Not to mention, if you are interested in this more athletic outcome where like, hey, I would like to be able to sprint and jump and cut. Newsflash, heads up, if you didn't know this, you're going to spend the majority of your time doing that on one leg.
Yeah.
So it's probably worth your time getting strong. Like you can VBT that also, right? Like you can VBT that reverse lunge. It's something I don't see utilized enough, and people listening, like, don't be afraid to pull that trigger and go there, because like it'll be humbling at first. The reason I think a lot of people don't go there is because they get embarrassed. It's like they're not moving a lot of load. They feel like they're super off balance. It's like, just give it time. Just stay consistent with it. Like, put your ego away. It'll pay for itself in dividends in the long run.
Oh, yeah. I think Mike Boyle is definitely favoriting this podcast, talking about all the single leg stuff.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, man. So some of the younger trainers, I mean, they were probably in Huggies at the time Mike Boyle came out with like functional strength coach 2 or 3 when it was like poo-pooing on squats and doing all the single leg stuff. But I mean, that's probably a good 10, 12 years ago now, or more.
Yeah.
Because in that model, he still deadlifted them, right?
I believe so. I'd have to go back and look.
Because you're still getting your big bilateral movement on a deadlift, which more people can get into safely than a really well executed squat, I would argue.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's far easier to get someone to high handle trap bar deadlift than it is to get somebody to do a really good squat.
Oh, yeah,
100%.
for sure.
Right? I think that's even that's an old Gray Cook thing. Like I think I remember him talking about that once. This is way back in the day, right? You maintain the squat, you train the deadlift. It was something in those lines. Like he thought of the squat just like maintain the pattern, but then if you're going to push load and velocity, like go after it in a deadlift.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, but okay. So you can get really strong on these single leg reverse lunge, rear foot elevated Bulgarian squat variations. So don't be afraid to go there. Especially if you're the type of person who, when you squat, it's like my hips hurt, my back hurt, my knee hurts. Like one of the simplest things you can do is just pull it and go with the single leg variation. It's amazing how much cleans up pretty rapidly.
Put the bar in front of you for the next 6 months. Do it on one leg. Repeat till strong.
Yeah, exactly. I think that on the track day also, like getting to actually walk through a lot of the drills and the progressions and the throws and kind of how we think about more of that once we get standing up, that top speed realm, because day one in the gym, we were doing way more agility, change of direction, like half kneeling accelerations. We were living more in that like very short 5 to 10 yard realm. And then we went out to the track on day 2, hung out in the field, and that's where we were able to actually talk about like getting up, standing tall. Like this is what top speed needs to look like for people. And I think one of the things that I noticed as a struggle for people was like the arm action. The difference in arm action on acceleration versus then being at top speed. A lot of people were like super just like little drum beaters in here. My high school football coach listens to this, he'll laugh because that's what he used to always call us. Beating drums. But if you're in here like beating drums, that's no good. Right? Like during the acceleration phase, like you need to punch and get long. And then like that arm swing, once we actually get up tall, will get smaller and tighter, but it's not just like elbow flexion. Like you're still getting legit arm pump. I don't know if you guys felt like you saw something really similar.
What do you got, Ron?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical what we see with most of the athletes we work with anyway. I think one of the barriers for guys who do lift a lot and haven't been out running is that, I mean, my shoulder flexion might be 90 degrees. So trying to get that front arm up, it usually flops out to the side like a chicken wing. So I think that's why you see a lot of these guys have this rotational and coil. But I mean, you almost have to put them in positions where they are falling and they have no option but to split the arms and do it. And I'm kind of a lazy coach. I'll just throw people on hills because you can't get up a hill, a steep one anyway, without pumping the arms. So it teaches a lot of the behaviors that I want without me just, berating them constantly. But a lot of resisted runs too, I think have been beneficial because it just slows the speed down. It allows them time to open up, to kind of explore these ranges of motion. But, some of the strong guys just get this like yabba dabba doo Flintstone run out of the gates, where it's just real hurried and choppy and they go nowhere fast.
I was going to piggyback on that super quick, and then Keiran will go to you. In terms of like the really strong guys who are coming back to some type of maybe like sprinting, more athletic stuff, I think one of the points that also came up, which is really important, is you probably need to do less when you're getting back into sprinting, because like when you are really strong, when you have that strength background, your first instinct is going to be like, you're going to try to muscle everything. And that's not speed. Speed is like, it's fluid, it's loose. Like, go look at a YouTube video headshot on of Usain Bolt running 100 meters. Homeboy looks like he's taking a nap. He's totally flow zone. But you take people that have been primarily just lifting in a weight room and bring them out to the track, and it's just like, ugh! It's just like max effort, everything's tense. It's like, bro, go like 85-90%. Like,
Yeah.
like, do less than you think you need to. Like, it's very forgetting Sarah Marshall in that realm. But Keiran, what do you got on this also?
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I really like, and actually, you and I think Lance had made the point about the Olympic podcast episode, just like, you know, slowing people down, getting them on the force side, and that's where you can actually learn a little bit more, right? Because you're actually going a little slower. So I really like, we talked about hills is probably like the easiest, simplest, lowest barrier for cleaning stuff up for a lot of guys. And then to your point, James, was like, we probably need a lot more like extensive methods early on when you're coming from the gym out back to the field. A lot more submax. It's okay to like cut your sprints to like, you know, 80-85% as you kind of like start to build some volume back in. So I really liked both of those methods. And then also just doing the basics really, really well. Because I know people hadn't been out to the track in a while, but even talking about coaching their athletes and stuff, like just a really well executed, like skip for distance, you know, like guys had a little brain fart, like trying to get that going again even, or like,
Yeah,
like really well done extensive bounds or like anything in that realm. Like going back to like PE in middle school and stuff, right? Like revisiting those basics. And then once you have those tools, you can start challenging the motor learning or whatever by like starting to layer things, right? Hit your bounds and then hit your 10-yard flying sprint out of that just to build some elasticity before the sprint. Or then you can combine your broad jump, chest pass into your sprint, but get the basics down really well before you start trying to do anything too funky. But then you could layer on top of that if you really want to.
Yeah, I think that was another big one, especially with this. If you want to get back into sprinting, start way slower than you think you need to. Like a little bit goes a really long way. Like spend time on more of those extensive jump variations we talked about, right? Like the bounds, either like the alternating or the single leg bounding. Like get your tendons and ligaments and things like used to this type of activity again. When you start to actually do stand up and do more top end speed work, like just make your flying sprint 10 yards. Have like a 20-yard build in, 10-yard sprint, and then cool down. Because I know a lot of people will just go from like 0 to 100. They're like, okay, I'm going to go do flying sprints. I'm going to do a 20 build up with a 30 top end. And then I'm like, yo, you're going to blow a quad or a hamstring during that 30-yard top end. Like sprinting is more than I think anything else. Like when you don't use it, you lose it. And you got to be really careful and patient when you're bringing this back into your life. Because I'm the notion that you should be able to sprint. If you're a human and you want to consider yourself an athlete, you should be able to sprint. If you can't sprint, not an athlete. Like, let's be honest.
Being strong is cool, but nothing looks more unathletic than being slow and uncoordinated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really well said.
I think one of the cool things was like obviously we've all been using like the Rebel programs or the methodologies for a few years now, and so were the guys who had come out, or the guys who had been on the programs. You could tell, like speaking about like all the vertical integration, like just the dimmer switching and everything. Everybody did pretty solid with the athletic movements. Everybody was hammering the weights pretty good, right? Like there wasn't anybody who was like, you wouldn't look at anybody and say you're not supposed to be here, right? Like everybody was kind of in the wheelhouse. Everybody did fine, like picking the drills up. I'm sure if we had done like a Metcon, everybody, like the hike, everybody besides the elevation, everybody was able to keep up on the hike. So it was pretty cool to see the methodology like really, really does pay off, and you really can kind of be the total package.
Yeah, the weekend is just a microcosm of that idea, right? Like we went and had a nice hike at elevation in the mountains. We did change of direction work. We jumped, we sprinted, we threw, we lifted heavy weight. We got massive arm pumps. Like Like you saw a little bit of everything in a short period of time, and like everybody did great.
Everybody did pretty good on the spike ball too. I was pretty impressed watching everybody.
Yeah, dude. Spike ball is the game of champions and the best warm up of all time.
Yeah,
100%.
So when we build the barn, we're just gonna have a dedicated spike ball court because that's just all I'm gonna do to warm up is I'll play spike ball for 20 minutes and then I'm gonna go lift.
That's it.
Yeah, I think that's great.
One other thing I did want to bring up here, we can finish on this because Ryan, you brought this up earlier, and I thought this was really funny. So you had mentioned that that Cassim Hansen at N1 had a funny Instagram post about how someone was disqualified from the Olympic Games because they have a wide ISA, which I thought was hilarious. That was so good. And like you mentioned earlier, guys, like don't get so lost in that realm that you blow it so far out of proportion. This is straight signal to noise, like Nassim Taleb 101. Some people are like, oh my God, I have a wide or a narrow ISA. I'm so fragile. I can't do anything now. And it's like, bro, that is not the case. Stop it. Like, it's important for us to keep that in mind. But like, you're not a fragile little butterfly. Like, go ham, go train hard, have fun. Like we'll manage that in training, but it's like sometimes people take this wide ISA, narrow ISA, my infrapubic angle. Like they take all of these things and they make themselves feel like, oh, well, I can't train hard until my ISA is normal. I'm like, bro, there's not a strong, powerful human on the planet that has a air quote, because who knows what normal actually is, like normal ISA. So just a thing, like if you find yourself stuck in that rabbit hole and you're beginning to think like, oh my God, I can't train hard, like similar to the HRV people who it's like, I woke up today and like, oh, well, my HRV score is bad, so I can't do anything. It's like, bro, you've worked out. Yeah. I'm like, you're okay. You're going to be fine. Okay. Like, there's another, like, you're not fragile. Okay. So don't just stop it.
And some of you like me might see the red score and
let's go.
It's a challenge. It's like, prove yourself today. Red just means full send.
How many people have you seen PR with like a crappy readiness score, right? You're just like, all right, well, doesn't matter. You're in the red anyway. Let's see what happens. And it just like blows it out of the water.
Yeah, just be smart. Like, go warm up and see how you feel. Like, if you start warming up and you're like, man, I feel like trash, the bar's not moving, then obviously be smart. But let's be totally honest. Most of the things that people are using to track these things are not that accurate.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me change my phrasing. They're probably not that precise. They may be accurate. They're probably not very precise. Like, I have an Oura ring. I wear it. I don't think it's like really that close in the ballpark for like my sleep and readiness scores. I think if you have a low resting heart rate, like mine's about 44, it doesn't do a great job with that because it sees a larger, because you get larger deviations and swings in heart rate. And it's taking that as like, oh, it told me I was awake for like 3 hours last night. I slept great last night.
Yeah.
So just take a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt. Like, I don't know, it's frustrating when people go too far down that realm. It's like, well, I can't lift hard now. It's like, incorrect. You just need to probably program better.
If you're a real athlete, as in you get paid to do it, or even if you just compete recreationally, like they are not going to delay tip off because your HRV score is red.
Well, bro, that's like we've been very fortunate here to get a good number of military people in training with us, either in one-on-one or on the team, guys in special forces, Marines, etc. And it's like, oh, sorry, you can't go out today. Your HRV's not looking too good. It's like, bro, it's called real life. I don't think that's an option. Yeah, it's just one of those things where like we've probably amply beat this dead horse now, and I'm getting really repetitive. But that was another one.
I'll circle back because I do want to go back to that, like the ISA and stuff. It's
go ahead.
You know, I think a lot of trainers, and I put myself in this category, like intellectually, all that the science and the theory behind that stuff is it's just interesting to me. And I think a lot of other people find that, and this industry, above all, from what I've seen, is just very biased towards self-improvement. That's kind of the name of the game with fitness anyway, and it carries over to education for a large number of people in this industry. And it's, you know, you start to learn these things, and people get so absolute about it to where it interferes with actually making these binary decisions of our primary job is to deliver a training effect and make sure that we're making progress in certain aptitudes of fitness, and we can identify those and we can quantify those, you know, speed, strength, endurance, like these all have quantifiable metrics. But you know, when we're dancing in this theory, it's like we're and first of all, anybody strong, they're not going to woo-saw their way to strength. Like, I'm not going to breathe and recapture all this position.
You can manifest your deadlift, Ryan.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's just my thinking on it. And, I've been down many rabbit holes throughout my career. I mean, we were big into the FMS at one point. It was, very simplified version, but it became, very limiting in some respects because, I was younger and just didn't have the perspective to train around some of these things. And somebody may pass a test before a session and training affects what they look like after or vice versa, so it's very dynamic.
It just comes back to that point you made earlier of we have to respect these things. We also have to remember there's still a lot of unknown going on in this world. And at the end of the day, like, we just got to choose better exercises. Like, most everyone on the planet can hack squat. They can hack squat. They can move some weight. It's just like, I just don't think people do a good enough job of figuring out, like, in a training session, there are going to be places where I'm going to do my sensory motor work and I'm very intentionally trying to improve movement competency. That's awesome. If that's all you do in a training session, you're terrible. Like, you have to have some place in a training session where you're chasing load or velocity. Like, you have to work hard and get an adaptation. I just think people don't do a good job of, like, choosing those exercises. Like, if you have to, just throw them on machines. Like, what's wrong with that? I don't understand why that's such a big thing. I think we saw a lot of people that are hesitant to utilize machines to their full advantage. Keiran and I were talking about this before we started recording. Like, all of my lifting right now is on machines. I freaking love it. It is amazing. I'm like, I barely have to warm up. I get great muscle feel. Like, I'm getting stronger. I'm putting on size. I have my track and field day to integrate, like, what's going on in the machine world. It's like, I just think people need to, like, broaden your scope in terms of, like, the exercises that you think you can choose. It's like, we can move past just barbells, even specialty bars, even using a heel wedge. Like, find the dumbest caveman gorilla exercise you can find if you have someone who, like, really needs that help. But you got to find some place for them to be able to actually work hard. And that's just choosing the right exercise, choosing better exercises for these people.
Yeah. I think to summarize the HRV and the ISA conversation, go back to was it Kevin? Kevin was front squat, was right? Yeah. So just go back to his. I don't think I'm going
lunging.
Over. Yeah, I don't think I'm going over 225. Yes, you are. and then he crushed it. So
yeah, then he smoked 275 for a triple on each leg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, okay. I feel like we probably ranted enough here. Anything else that really jumps off the page at you guys that would be worth bringing up, talking about here? I'm trying to think. Like, next time I would love just to have someone who just follows us around, like, videos everything, because there were, like, so many good little conversations and spinoffs where we talked about stuff that was really high quality.
Yeah, I think just the last parting words is like I think Ryan was saying, curating your community and, like, being really intentional about that. And I know for me, like, kind of like Ryan, right? Like, kind of at a frustrated place back in 2018, not surrounded by, I have a few good people around me here, but looking for more. And Rebel and James, back in the day, it was a lot smaller, but you definitely curated that community and made it a lot easier to get in and find those like-minded people. And even though we were communicating, like, we didn't meet for a few years, I learned so much in that time from you guys. And to Ryan's point, I knew I had a crazy challenge on Saturday. I lived my life a lot differently when I was being held accountable, knowing I had to catch, like, Ryan or Dayton or, any of those guys. So this is the place to be. And, I came in as an athlete, and I know I'm a coach now, but I still very much believe in what's going on here. So that's a huge deal for me.
Yeah, I would totally piggyback on that. Like, that's just, I think, my entire purpose and goal in life is to try to bring this total package, evolved model of strength and conditioning to more people. I just think there's so many people out there that were athletes in high school or athletes in college, and they just feel like they don't have a home, right? It's like they tried powerlifting and they liked parts of it. They've tried bodybuilding, they like pieces of it. It's like, you can have all of those things. Like, you can be strong in the big three. You can be jacked. You can be powerful. You can be conditioned. You can move really well and not be in pain. Like, this outcome is very 100% attainable, and we can get you competitive. You can throw down, have fun, have a community. Like, that's just what I want to keep working to build, because that weekend was so much fun for me. And I 100% believe just in the purpose and the journey, and I think like the mission that we all agree upon here. Ryan, Patrick, any wise parting words for the people?
I'll sum it up, and it's the conversation you and I had coming down the mountain, but just play long-term games with long-term people.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
That's really good. Another one of my massive man crushes. Have you bought that book? Or you don't need to get the book, because you can get the podcast, which is really good.
I have the podcast.
It's like 3 hours.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
It's good. Auto University.
Yeah.
Bluetooth.
Highly recommend. Naval Ravikant, How to Get Rich. It's not what you think it's going to be. The title's a little clickbaity, but it is phenomenal. Or The Almanac of Naval. I have 2 copies on my bookshelf, actually. I meant to give you one. But yeah, highly recommend. So we can leave it with that. Long-term games with long-term people. You're not a fragile little butterfly. Figure out where you need to work hard and can work hard. Surround yourself with the right people. Play, have fun. Choose good exercises.
Take your vitamins, say your prayers.
Oh, man, that's beautiful. We can end on that. Have a great week, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.